Okay. So, good morning, everybody. It's good to be here. We're going to talk for 45 minutes about how to scale a European SaaS business. We've all been through that in one way or another. I think the premise is that there's a lot of companies, a lot of SaaS companies that get to the early stage, that get to maybe seed stage of funding, get to $500,000, $1 million, $2 million of revenue, but it's then very difficult to break through to that next stage and really reach scale and get that kind of strong growth and high visibility of revenues moving forward. So we're going to talk about some of the lessons that we've learned about how to, what are the drivers of reaching scale as a SaaS business, and hopefully have a good discussion about that. So before I introduce my panelists, I'll just briefly introduce myself. I've kind of seen both sides of this subject, so hopefully I'll better kind of navigate us through fairly well. But I'm an entrepreneur turned investor. I've founded a few tech businesses. The most recent one and the most relevant one was called Message Labs, which I co-founded in 2000. Message Labs was an in-the-cloud, anti-spam, antivirus provider. We were one of the first SaaS companies in the world. We actually set up Message Labs before the term SaaS existed. We just thought moving antivirus and anti-spam into the cloud was a better way to address the growing virus problem, and it just when viruses were learning to piggyback on email, and the whole nature of the virus problem kind of got much, much more significant. So we moved it into the cloud. We deployed a more data-driven approach to identifying malware. So instead of looking for an exact match, we could predictively identify new threats, which was a big breakthrough at the time. I moved to the US in 2002 to run Message Labs expansion in the US market. We built the company up to $150 million of revenue by 2008. We were the second largest SaaS company in the world behind Salesforce. We were gearing up for a big IPO in 2008, and then the markets obviously crashed, but we ended up selling to Symantec for $700 million. I think the largest SaaS exit that there's been in Europe so far, but I think there's going to be many larger ones to come, and many of you, the founders of those companies are in this room today. So post Message Labs, me and 3 other guys, part of the founding team behind Message Labs, we set up Notion Capital as a VC just to invest in what we know, just to invest in SaaS and cloud-based software. And we thought that our experience of actually founding and scaling a big SaaS business would give us a good advantage in the market for evaluating opportunities and really supporting our companies in the portfolio, because we just specialize on enterprise cloud-based software. So that's what we did. We've now got about $300 million under management, about 35 companies in the portfolio, and many of which are here, I'm pleased to say. So anyway, I'll now hand over to Nikos to introduce himself.
Hello. I'm Nikos Moraitakis, founded Workable about 4 years ago. Workable makes recruiting software for companies like you, so you better go buy it. We've been in the market for about 3 years, started in Greece of all places. Now it's a much larger organization, about 100 people, 6,000 customers in 88 countries, and we're just in the beginning.
Okay, so I'm Tim Pickard. I'm Chief Marketing Officer of NewVoiceMedia. We are a 15-year-old SaaS company, so probably win the prize of being the oldest company here. And I'll go into our kind of history a little bit. But we do contact center software, so we're disrupting a very, very large industry with very, very significant players in it, using a SaaS model that we brought to market back in 2006 when the platform was built. So we do all of that kind of inbound side into contact center and help desk environments. But we also do the beginning of the customer journey as well, which is in the sales environment, where we integrate with Salesforce and other CRMs to provide a an outbound calling infrastructure that makes it much more effective, much more efficient for sales team, for inside sales team to contact customers and to create that the opportunities and pipeline for your businesses.
Thanks, Tim.
Okay.
Nicholas.
And so I'm Nikos, a co-founder of Algolia, 4 years old next month, and we offer a search as a service. So we mostly help developers to deliver a great search experience in their own website, own mobile apps. You may already have used us without knowing on things like Twitch, Medium, Periscope, all these players. When you search there, you're actually using us. 2,000 customers, about 60 people now in the team, and still growing very fast.
Great. Okay. Thanks, guys. So, as I said at the beginning, I think that the premise is that there's many SaaS companies out there sort of relatively subscale in one form or another. Not enough, particularly in Europe, not enough breakthrough to really reaching scale. So, guys, can you talk about maybe one thing, one kind of factor which you think was really, really important to helping you kind of break through and actually really starting to reach scale in your startup? Whoever wants to go.
I'll jump in. So I think it's difficult to point to one thing, but I think that there was a point at which it really started to take off for us. So I described the market that we're working in. It's a very large marketplace, and we decided that we were going to focus on a particular part of that market. So we weren't going to try and eat the whole elephant. We were going to focus on a particular part of that. And for us, that was about personalization. It was about changing the customer experience as they call into contact centers and help desk environments. And we focused around the Salesforce ecosystem. So we decided that we would be the best at integrating with Salesforce, at identifying customers as they called into contact centers, and being able to intelligently route those calls, either without an IVR menu-based system or with an IVR, depending on how our customers wanted to do that. But we recognized that this is a multi-billion-dollar global marketplace, and if we were going to make an impact, then we needed to focus on and become very, very good at a specific part of that. I guess it's kind of about the whole disruptive thing, and being able to disrupt a market and recognizing where the existing players were very strong, which was at the kind of the enterprise end, high-end enterprise software, very expensive, very fully featured. And what we decided to do was to say, well, actually, we're going to focus on a part of that. We're going to get very, very good at it, and we're going to give customers great value for that. And that's kind of the transition at which we started to acquire customers more rapidly, and the business started to grow very quickly.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think the to sort of distill that down, I think the importance of focus. I think the importance of focus is always important in the startup, but I think maybe particularly in the early years where people, resources, everything is very, very constrained. So I think the more focused you can be, the better. I think that, you never hear of a startup failing and someone says, oh, well, they were too focused. So I think there's definitely a lesson there. Yeah. Nicholas?
Yeah, I'd say staying really open-minded, be ready to be wrong, listen to your prospect customers. It really helped us to discover who we were. So when we started with another product and had to pivot because it didn't work out the way we wanted. And we became this search API, but along the way, we were just one search API among so many others. And by interacting with our beta tester, we realized that we had a huge differentiator, and we didn't even think about it at first. So our customers taught us who we were, in a way. And that was kind of always keeping your mind open, realizing that your first idea may not be the right one. Right. So focus is good, but you should not be blind by focus. Yeah. If you are really focused, it's really good, but you need to keep an open mind and realize that you may be wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the advantages that a SaaS business will always have relative to an on-premise software business is you can actually see that live environment. right? You can see the customer, the user engagement. You can see it down to a real granular level in a way that if you're just selling software, if you're Microsoft in the 1990s or whatever, you don't really know how the users are then using and interacting with the software. As a SaaS business, you can see it in real time. So I think to really understand that user engagement, and you as Des said earlier, I don't think your vision changes, but I think that you start to iterate some of the areas of the product and the product strategy based on your such a close understanding of your user engagement. I think that's definitely is always an advantage. I think that a SaaS business should really exploit relative to traditional software. Nikos.
In my mind, what happens somewhere around like a couple of million of ARR is that you can get $1 million ARR for just about anything if it's somehow useful. And because you're looking for product market fit, and because you treat your sales as an experiment, as a way to develop the product at that point, you develop a wrong mindset about how you scale sales and marketing. So, I remember saying, oh, we have this much revenue and we're spending nothing on marketing. It's a really stupid thing to say, because, if you don't have something you can spend money on, leverage that you can spend money and resources or whatever on to grow bigger, that's not really good. That's almost like an accident or personal heroics. And startups in the beginning think like that. And I think what changed for us is at some point we started realizing that, right, now we have to find a way, now we have to find a machine that is going to do marketing or sales. Depending on the company, it could be a different thing. It could be that you find a particular segment of the market that you can go and sell directly to. You could find an online acquisition channel that works very well for you. It doesn't matter what it is, but for me, what makes the company go from 1 to 10 is discovering something that you can throw some money or resources or people onto, and that will work repeatedly and get you to 10. And it requires changing your whole mindset about how, what is the marketing. Actually, for the first time, you actually have a marketing and a sales function in the company. Previously, it was a product development function, essentially. And some of the companies I admire that do this very well, they developed it in the same way they developed the product. They try to build something predictable, something that has known mechanics, something that has inputs and outputs that they can control and levers they can push. And so far as I can see, this is something that is going to be the game for a long time, because then from 10 to 50 or to 50 to 100, probably you need different ways to do this.
Yeah, okay. So I think that what you're kind of touching on there is product market fit to some extent. And I think that pre and post product market fit is so important to think about. And it was interesting just listening to the previous speaker saying that, I think he said 80% of SaaS companies never reach product market fit. So it's really, really hard to do. But my theory is that startups spend too much money. I think it's easier to raise seed money because there's just a lot more investors, both professional and just private investors in the market. So I think it's easier to raise seed money. You raise your seed money, and then I think there's just too much money spent pre-product market fit, trying this market, trying that market, responding to a big customer demand, changing the product to meet that demand. All this kind of experimentation pre-product market fit, I don't think is an efficient way to invest your money. So my sense is that the best way is to be really, really lean and really, really focused and really resource constrained, and just obsess about that and obsess about running your startup like that until you get product market fit, which means that you've got your value proposition, your pricing, and your clearly defined customer segment all aligned, and you've got a representative group of customers within that segment who are all telling you, I love your product, I could no longer imagine running my business without your product, I'm going to be a customer for a long time. They have that. It's not just an experiment, they have that strong attachment to your product. And so I think once you've got product market fit, then I think you really want to be bold and ambitious, raise a lot of money, and be really aggressive. So I think my sense, particularly for European startups, is too much money spent pre-product market fit and actually not enough money spent post-product market fit. And I think American companies are much better at that, and the investors are more aggressive and will put big Series A and Series B rounds together to enable startups to do that. At MessageAbs, we knew that the virus threat was changing. Viruses worked out how to piggyback on email. The whole nature of the problem changed. We knew that every customer we talked to was just biting our hand off to get our solution because we solved a problem that traditional antivirus software didn't solve. We knew we had product market fit. We had that pent-up demand. And then we were able to raise $40 million in a Series A round. I mean, it was 2000, so it was dot-com boom. It was a good time to be raising money. But then we were really, really aggressive in deploying that capital, and I moved to the US. But I think really understanding pre- and post-product market fit, very, very important. So, guys, do you want to touch on that a bit more?
Yeah. Look, what you're saying is true. The one thing I'm discovering is that the American companies are really bold when they actually have something, much bolder than most Europeans are. I know this is a massive generalization, but but generally, the whole ecosystems that we see, the way companies operate, are prepared to really go to town with it when they have something that works. On the other hand, in SaaS, it's also dangerous in the sense that there's a limit to how much you can accelerate or how much you can meaningfully accelerate a SaaS business. These things take time. And that's the beauty of them. They take time, but they're very stable, they're very strong. Past some point, these companies are not going to go crashing down so easily. Yeah. And if you're a product-focused company, you also need time for the product to get there. Yeah. Sometimes fast isn't necessarily very good. And if you raise too much money and you get to the point where you raised $100 million of capital and still haven't turned a profit, in some cases it may be justified, but you better be somebody like Box. You better be somebody like that. But there's a lot of really good size businesses, super valuable businesses, billion-dollar businesses that will be a bit slightly slower with better unit economics and all that stuff. And that is the whole aggressiveness of the American VC scene, by the way, which is led by the consumer guys who have different rules to play with, yeah, has spilled over inside the SaaS world as well. There's a fine balance to be played there.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah,
we're one of those companies that fall into that. We raised $140 million, so we fall into. But let me tell you why that's a good thing.
Okay.
So it took us a long time to find product market fit. The business essentially was bootstrapped by the founders, built the platform, and these guys were visionaries. Ashley Unit and Richard Pickering. They saw that there was an opportunity to build a SaaS-based business for the contact center industry, and literally nobody believed them back in 2000. So they basically bootstrapped it themselves. They built the platform. They did all of the things that you just saw the last speaker talk about. They were coding in their bedrooms and building it out. It took them 6 years to build this and to start acquiring customers in 2006. And even then, the model wasn't right. I joined in 2010 when we raised our kind of Series A round, and at that point, we changed the model. We changed the model completely. We sold off some parts of the business that looked promising, but we didn't believe had a sufficient market size. The market wasn't good enough for us. And we kept other parts of the business, and we changed the pricing model. So we to your point, we had to change a lot of things. We weren't set in our belief that the path was actually set at that point.
Yeah.
And that was a big change for us. And then the business started taking off from that point. But we sat in front of VCs, not you, Josh, but other VCs who in 2010 said, "We don't think this market is going to go to the cloud. Yeah. We think you're wrong." Fortunately, they were wrong, and the transition is happening and is speeding up. But you've still got to convince people at that point. Yeah. If you're moving from a traditional business to a cloud business, that transition is actually going to happen. Yeah. We firmly believe that it would, and and now it is. So the market wasn't there originally. The guys had the vision to say, we firmly believe this is going to happen.
Yeah.
10 years later, it took off. But that's a long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it normally takes a bit of time to find product market fit, unless you really get lucky. I mean, I think at MessageAs, we kind of got lucky a little bit. We were in the right place at the right time. But it normally takes some time. And so that's why I think it's better to go in that search of product market fit as a very lean organization. So you're a little bit under the radar. You don't have demanding investors expecting you to hit aggressive sales targets and everything else. You can kind of find your own path. And then when you reach product market fit, I think you have more credibility and you can raise a larger round at that point. Whereas I think if you raise a larger round pre-product market fit, spend a lot of that on inefficient go-to-market activities, then you don't hit your targets, you go back to the investment community, they're probably not going to be prepared to then put a large investment behind you, and you can get into this sort of holding pattern of never quite really breaking out. And that's why I think post-product market fit and having a different approach, different mentality, the way that you invest your money is so important. Nicholas, do you want to talk about it?
To get back to your point about investing too much or not enough, and your counterpoint, Nikos, I think there is a kind of a continuum between, let's say, Zenefit, maybe that was very, very aggressive, a box, and most European startups that are very lean and stay lean for very long. In our case, I guess we didn't invest too much pre-market fit, but probably not enough post-market fit. And I mean, people are always surprised when we say we are just 60 people. They think we are much more people today. And the thing is, I think even if we are growing very fast, we could grow even faster if we were more aggressive. So that's something we should learn from the Americans. They do that better than we do.
Yeah.
Maybe not go as far as Zenefits, but we should get out of our comfort zone and again grab that next 5% every month that is going to come from that.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's a good. Sorry.
I was going to say about that point is that you've got to find the levers for scale though, because there's no point in throwing money at the problem if you don't really know what those levers of scale are.
The main reason we are just 60 is just a question of finding the right leaders. We don't want to invest in marketing, in sales, in anything if we don't have the right leaders, the right execs to help us with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way I like to think about it is that there's a set amount of total money you're going to raise all the way to the end. Find out what it is. I don't know, is it 40, 50, 100, whatever you think it should be for your company, your size. And no matter where you are in funding rounds, etc., at every point decide the speed. That's the main thing lever you have to put. What speed you need at that point. And it has to do with the marketing challenge you have or whatever, how much strength you want to retain, how much time you want for the product to get somewhere. That's the whole game. The biggest trap that people fall into is that you raise some money, now you have to do something with that. This is not a discrete thing. Every A, B, C, they have labels on them, and so you're supposed to do something between these two. These are just small installments you get along the way for the total amount.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. So that sort of makes me think about I think the conventional thinking in the market is that it takes about $100 million to build a big category-leading SaaS business that will then go on to IPO or a really significant exit. Do you guys think that that's right? And then sort of beyond that, can you talk a little bit about your experiences to fundraising and kind of maybe some of the things that you've learned from being out in the market? And obviously, you guys have all raised a decent amount of money. So I think it would be good to talk about the fundraising side a little bit.
So I should go. Okay.
You go, Nikos. You go.
I think it's a discussion that becomes very big in our heads for most startups. Maybe because the ecosystem is driven by VCs as dominant figures in the public conversation. Maybe because it's the one common thing that we can all measure and put a number on. I think at the end of the day, if you build something that works and makes sense, some people will give you some money. How? I'm not saying it doesn't matter. It's an important function, financing the company very well. But one should think of it as just getting the resources that need to get the job done. I don't think it's particularly complicated. At least I thought it was much easier than I would expect before. And at the end of the day, the things that we obsess during fundraising, like this term or that dilution or this or that, end up being unimportant in the long run. What matters is actually to spend that money wisely and to make something valuable.
Mm-hmm. So are you a believer in, like, as a founder, you're going to get a smaller piece of just a bigger cake by raising more money, and because that gives you the investment that you think you need to make to really build the kind of business that you have ambition to build?
That's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, why do you take the money?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So we've raised over 100 million over the last 4 years, and I think the amount it's interesting that you bring that up, and I think the amount is dependent on what kind of industry you're in. So ours is quite capital intensive. We have to build a global infrastructure. We needed a pretty decent amount of money to be able to do that. The other thing we talked a little bit about is speed and how quickly do you want to move. And I think that is also dependent on the competitive intensity of the marketplace. After our kind of seed rounds, we went to Highland Capital, who we were very pleased with that round because it gave us a kind of an in into the North American market, and subsequently Bessemer and TCV and Salesforce Ventures. So I think that mix of VCs has been very important for us, very supportive for us. After the original investments. Yeah. So Notion and Eden were very supportive in the early days and have subsequently been very supportive of our business. And I think for us the importance of speed was big, and also in terms of moving into the US market was a big deal for us because it's a very big market and has a lot of the competitors are US competitors. So we wanted to compete with them on their home turf. We wanted to be able to get that edge to be able to develop our product, market our product, and go to market in the toughest market, and that would give us a big plus outside of that because most of those haven't actually gone global at this point. Yeah. So we needed to raise money in order to be able to do that. And if you look at the kind of the tranches that we've raised, you can see that one fueled that growth into North America. Then there's the kind of the global infrastructure that we built out, and now we're building out kind of a whole new infrastructure about our ability to manage calls on a global basis. And again, that's a kind of a unique. So pushing the boundaries all the time, and using the investment to be able to do that. I think having a clear idea of what you want to do with that money is really important.
Okay, Nikos, how much have you guys raised?
Total 21 million.
Okay.
So
and how do
shy of the 100.
How do you think about fundraising?
Fundraising is here to help you to go faster, stronger, to a bigger outcome. So you need to want that before deciding to fundraise, of course. If you raise tens of millions from someone, they are going to want some return. They want you to go fast and to put that money to good use. You are not raising just to build a business. You are raising to build a fast-growing business. That said, I don't know if you need 100 or if you need more or less. It really depends on what you want to do. In our case, we raised 21 million. We still have most of it in the bank. So we could become break-even and do a very nice business without raising any more money. But then if we can go much faster by raising more, I'd be very happy to do so. What's your mission? What's your end goal? If you want to become a category leader or even more, then you get investors that are very happy to help you to do that, do it.
Yeah. Okay. So just we've touched on it a little bit, but I think we can't have this conversation without talking about the US. And I think generally the thinking is that if you want to build a category-leading SaaS business, you've got to get out. You've got to get out to the US. You've got to be competitive in the US. It's got to be one of your most significant, if not your largest market over time. But it's a very. I've been through it myself. I lived in New York for 14 years. I've just moved back to London, so I think about this a lot. But getting the timing right, getting into the US, getting the plan right, and actually being successful at it is actually pretty difficult to do. And I think there's a lot of European tech companies that try to expand in the US and don't have the success that they were hoping for. But how do you guys think about the US market? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Want me to start?
Yeah.
I think it depends on your business. In our case, we market to developers. So you have developers everywhere in the world. We're a SaaS business. SaaS, one of the big advantages is that you don't need to have people on the ground. At least not always, depending on who you market to. So for us, it was obvious from day one that we needed to go to the US. Actually, since we have started to sell the product, we always had more customers in the US than anywhere else from the very beginning, even when we were still based in France. So as a company, we started in France. We flipped the company to a US company back in 2014 when we participated to Y Combinator. And since then, we're headquarters there. That said,
So you spend most of your time in the US?
I live there now, so I'm spending all my time in the US, most of my time in the US, but I moved there only a bit more than a year ago. So before then, we already had about 60% of our business coming from the US, and all the company was still based in Paris. So it's possible. It's difficult. It means a lot of traveling back and forth, but it's actually possible.
Yeah, I mean, at Message Apps, we were able to sell into some significant US customers before we were in the US. And we were able to do that because we had customers in the UK, and then they had like British Gas, for example. Their sister company was called Air Products. We sold into Air Products in the US. So we sold into some businesses in the US that were connected in some way to our customers in the UK. And they were companies that were, to some extent, early adopters. They just loved the technology, and that was really important to us because it enabled us to kind of seed the US market before making a really big investment in the market. And I think to try and find those businesses that are connected to customers you have in Europe and actually try and sell into some of those businesses who are early adopters, it gives you the confidence that you can be successful in the US, and it means that you're going to really hit the ground running when you enter that market. So that was definitely, that kind of seeding strategy for us was an important part of our. I mean, we didn't really do it deliberately. It just kind of happened like that. I don't think we were particularly clever about it. But looking back on it, it was an important kind of stepping stone for us into the US.
I guess you can actually seed sometimes directly from the US. It depends. As of today, people are very used to buy like remotely, especially in the US. You don't need to be face-to-face. And so, yeah, leverage that. Another thing you should do if you are early stage is probably to go there, fly to San Francisco, spend 1 week, 2 weeks there, meet as many people as you can, and then come back, and your vision of the future of your product will have changed. That's going to help you anyway, because they are like defining like the categories usually, and so the more you can meet possible customers there, which are usually a bit in advance compared to the ones you would find in Europe, will help you to go faster.
Yeah, I agree. Tim?
So our experience is very similar to Message Apps' experience. Our service, we have customers who buy in the UK, but they have agents, they have call centers all over the world. So we were experiencing the fact that we were servicing customers in the US and other continents around the globe. And that gave us the confidence to say, well, actually, we probably don't have to build an infrastructure there straight away. We don't necessarily have to have people there straight away. So we started acquiring customers, and they found us. Our original customers in North America found us. And they were saying that we can't find what you do locally. So we want to start using your service, which was great. And as you say, it gives you confidence that there is a market there and that you can service. So we started kind of fairly gently by having salespeople based here, but long pole fishing very long pole fishing into North America. And we built up a steady stream of customers doing that. And then over time, we invested more and more. We've now got 2 offices there, East and West Coast. We probably have around 100 people there now.
And do you think it helps having US investors to kind of underpin your expansion in the US? I think Alex is here, by the way, so you better be careful how you answer.
He is. Yeah, he is here. I think it absolutely. Yeah, I think it does help. No, I think it does help because I think it's about credibility as well. If our customers tend to be kind of mid-sized, larger organizations, their average deal size is $40,000 to $50,000. And they do want to look you in the eye when they're spending that kind of money. They want to see that you're real, that you have infrastructure, that you're not going to let them down, that you're going to be there for a period of time. And I think it's about, as I say, it's about corporate credibility. The fact that we had, blue chip investors, US investors, I think is an important part of that process.
Yeah, cool. Nikos?
We have the kind of business that theoretically could be built anywhere. We're a low price point. We're talking to SMBs. 85% of our customers have never spoken to any of us. So theoretically, you could build a business like that, without ever stepping your foot in the US.
But you do live in the US, right?
I do live in Boston. In the past couple of years, we do have 25% of our people there. I think, obviously, for high enterprise sales, it's the face-to-face thing as well. In our case, actually, we had 60% of our customers in the United States, long before anybody ever went there. I think there's some things as the company scale that you can do a little bit better there. On the marketing and sales front, let's face it, the Americans are better.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, there's not something natural about them, but there are trained people who really know what they're doing there. And at some point, you will need to build that infrastructure, and it's better to build it over there. I wouldn't rush to go to the US very early to find investors in the US, especially early. Maybe they don't matter so much. Maybe they matter later. But also being there, doing your marketing and your sales there, facing the competition there. For me, one of the biggest things we got from the US is that, okay, we are from Greece as well, which is a country where there's just no competition, not very many other people like us.
I imagine there. Greece to the US is quite a culture change.
There's an emotional thing about it and a psychological thing about how you deal about your business. You come from a small country, it's very easy to have the sense of, oh, we're hitting it big, we're good, we're amazing. And then you go there, you realize how little you are.
Yeah.
How insignificant you are, and how there's another 1,000 people doing it better than you. And then you try to hire some of those people and learn from them, and it's psychological. It's the urgency to do better. So for me, one of the biggest things we got out of the US, and why we have people, even people who work in the Athens office and don't really have a reason to be there to actually visit and have excuses to go and do stuff, is to be there and participate in the mentality that the market has about. I think if you have to build a big business, whether you like it or not, it's very unlikely that it's not going to have anything to do with the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think certainly my experience was moving out to the US with message apps. It was a steep learning curve, but it made the whole company stronger because you get out there and it's just a bigger, more demanding, more advanced market. And I think it pushes your startup forwards. It just makes you a stronger, better organization. If you're going to go over there and compete, you realize that you need to really step things up. And I think it's particularly, for us, it was particularly on a cultural level, where I found in the US, most of the startups were very mission-driven. They just have this, just do whatever it takes kind of mentality. They're inspired by so much success that has come before them, particularly in the Bay Area. And there's an incredibly hard-working, particularly when there's a new launch coming up or some significant event about to happen. They will just do whatever it takes to get the stuff done. And I think in Europe, we were having, our engineering team was great, but quite a few of our engineers, it says in their contract that lunch is between 12 and 1, and they would go out and sit in their car between 12 and 1 eating their sandwiches. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's just, we're not going to compete very well with the US on that basis. And US companies, everybody there, if it's a strong culture, they're not looking at their contracts ever. They are just into what they're doing. And so I think to try and use your move into the US as a way to really kind of turbocharge your culture as a real can-do kind of culture and kind of inspire people that that's what you need to do to compete in the US, it certainly helped us to raise our game, and that made the whole organization stronger. So I think it's definitely a market that you want to get into, but I think you need to do it post-product market fit. You need to have the funding, and ideally, if you've seeded the market as well, like we talked about, I think really helps. Yeah. So what do you guys think about the kind of cultural... Do you think there are kind of cultural differences, like I talked about, between Europe and the US? Do you think that's an important point or not?
Yeah, of course there are, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't say something is better or worse.
Yeah.
It's different. And I think it's different from company to company as well, because one of the nice things of building your own company is you get to have a lot of say what culture you're going to build inside.
Yeah.
Our American guys are out at lunch religiously at the same time.
Really? Okay.
But that's a thing that the company has.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's complementary. They're complementary skills. So, as you say, in North America they have great skills around go-to-market and sales and marketing, and that's things that we can learn from, and that we can use ourselves to get stronger as a business as a whole. And I think that's a really important thing. And as you say, Josh, the competitive intensity in North America is just different, and it makes you better. It makes you sharper. It makes you go faster, because you want to be successful in that market, and that makes you stronger in other parts of the world as well.
Yeah, I think you have to think global. Americans, Europeans, everyone has some kind of expertise. The thing is, actually, we may have an advantage in Europe because we think about going to the US very early on, whereas Americans don't really think about getting out of the US.
Yeah.
So we have the advantage of being able to combine these cultures together and leverage that to build a better business.
Yeah.
And then maybe think about building your own culture, your company culture, as one global culture, and not like separate, one office here, one office there, with different culture. No, you need to think global, and you are building a global business.
Yeah.
Leverage everything you can.
Yeah. No, Europe definitely has advantages, and one of them, I think, is that understanding of different cultures, different languages, how to enter new markets. I think that this important thing is we really need to make sure that we're taking advantage of that. But yeah, I mean, you can definitely get out there and compete with the US-based competitors. We actually, at MessageAbs, our main competitor was a company called Postini, and they were founded at exactly the same time as us. They were founded in Silicon Valley, and we were founded in the Stroud Valley in the middle of Gloucestershire. And so I think we read the manual wrong. But we built a much bigger company than them, and we were really proud of that. And I think one of the reasons for that is they were slightly bigger than us in the US, but every other market, we were bigger. So we got good at understanding new market entry. So I think it's an advantage that European companies really need to focus on. Anyway, I'm being told that our time is up. So thank you very much, Nikos, Tim, Nicholas. That was a good discussion. I hope we can continue having it later on over a few Guinnesses. But thanks, guys. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.